Now we'll continue our examination of our Italian bishop c5, c3, knight f6, d4, pawn takes, pawn takes. We receive rather this check, and we put the knight on c3. Last time we looked at knight takes e4. In the next video, we will look at bishop takes c3, which sort of makes sense if they want to play knight takes c4 on the next move. And you might remember that, well, I'm not going to bother you with this now. But the second most common move, it's very close with bishop takes c3, is to simply castle. So we will look at that now. Castling is a very natural move. And what we do now is, while it would be really nice to start an attack, we got to remember what our objective is. We are leaving the pawn in the center to be captured. We want to get very rapid development. We want to pin. This is going to be a very useful resource now that the black king is out of the center. In the last section, a lot of our attacks had to do with the king being in the center, like bishop f7 and so on. But by castling and us castling, black now sort of has to take the knight on c3, because if they don't, they're just going to get into huge trouble. If they play a move like d6 here, which you will get some people playing, in a lot of these positions, we're actually going to look at some stuff a bit later, which looks very similar. In a lot of these positions, the move bishop g5 is just really brutal for black, because the next move is knight d5, and we're putting pressure on the pinned piece. You can then take that knight, they have to take with the pawn, and you can then bring in your queen. You know, you can also just move the knight to d5, of course, but then there is always the lines where you lose this pawn, and if you don't want to get involved in any of this business, you know, you can always play a move like queen d3, which defends this a little bit more, but more importantly defends that. And so you'll end up in a position where you just have a massive center. You'll play h3, which stops bishop g4. And the point that I'm trying to make is moves like d6 just aren't really going to cut it. Black has to do this, and they kind of have to go here. If they don't, you go e5 with an absolutely crushing position. You also play bishop g5 with a crushing position. The only move here that, you know, is a challenge is maybe d5, because you have to take, otherwise you're just going to lose the pawn and it's not going to be good. But here you're just better because you have the bishop pair. Are you winning? No, you're obviously not winning, but, you know, what I would play here is maybe something like queen d3. And you defend the pawn, you prepare this bishop maneuver to go threaten a checkmate, and you also have knight g5 up your sleeve, right? Defended by the bishop with a threat on h7. Rook is always coming to the middle. If you don't want to play for knight g5, you can always trade the knight and then put the rook in the center. But you have a great position because you have central pawns, two bishops, and all the attacking prospects, which is basically why black really needs to take this pawn. Like, if they're going to give up the bishop pair, they really should be taking the pawn. And now, just like in the last video, we have to take advantage of d5, because if we don't play d5, black's going to get a great game. All right, and now we have a couple of choices. This is all slightly different than what we just looked at, because what we just looked at, you know, black is taking the pawn immediately, and when we get to this position, black now is sort of out of time to castle. Black has to commit to take our knight, because if they don't, you know, we'll check them, we'll play d5. We have to attack in a way that the king is never going to successfully escape. Well, we always kind of have a powerful attack. Yeah, let's take a look. Castles, takes, knight e4, and d5. All right. And now I'm only looking at two moves. I'm really not going to look at knight b8 because the plans are kind of similar. Knight a5 makes the most sense. Also, if knight c3, your queen's hanging, but you have, I think, like no less than 5 moves here. Like, I think you can go here, 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 and here. And every single one of those moves attacks the knight. Every single one of those moves attacks the knight, and both knights hang. So I think any of these moves attacks the knight on c3, and that's why it's just not a good move. So knight a5, and now we show the point, and now we're really kind of showing our mojo here. Black can play a few things. As I already said, knight c3 is just bad. It's bad for several reasons. You know, queen d2 and queen e1 is just a pure x-ray, so that's not good. There's some queen f6, but you always have some bishop move. But also you have just a pure vintage Greek gift. They don't have to accept it. If they don't accept the Greek gift, you can obviously just move the queen up and the bishop is defended and the knight is hanging. Just don't go to d4 and hang the fork. But this knight, and now it's not knight g5. It's very important. It's not knight g5 because your queen is hanging. You know, you would think knight g5, king here, queen here, it's mate. No, it's not exactly that, because here they can actually sack the queen because your queen is hanging. And it looks like you can maybe give a check, but they'll block with the queen. This is all a very long-winded way to say that it's a Greek gift, but a non-traditional one, because we simply do it this way. We don't take, well, we go knight g5, and the point is, after f5 or g6, we put the queen on h3, and we go to h7. It's actually similar but different. Different but similar. Similar but different, right? It's not going to be a pure mate. Like, they can move the rook, but you go here. I wonder if you can play rook e1 here and take all of this, but check here, check. Like, I mean, all this should be good enough. Some bishop f4, some bishop f4, etc. But you're always winning here. Look, they can't play knight c3. And you will have people who play knight c3. You know, they could back up. And now you have a very fun little idea. You attack the knight, and then you run to the other side of the board. So kind of a fun one, a nice little, you know, queen a4, queen h4 is a beautiful resource. Shows the absolute power and mobility of the queen. And if they play h6, because, again, the threat right now is to go here, take the knight, and deliver mate, this is kaboom. And this is game over in 14 moves. Beautiful swarm of pieces. You're absolutely going to win games like this because Black sort of followed a very natural progression of the moves. You know, they castled, and then they were like, oh, well, I win a pawn, d5, and, you know, suddenly you've got the bishops pointed, and you've got a great game. Another move that makes a lot of sense here is f5. It's not very popular. Moving the knight is somehow significantly more popular. F5 is not a terrible move, but you just bring another piece. Like, you have time to add another attacker. Another thing about f5 is that it weakens the king in the long run. Like, this diagonal is weak, but f5 is not a terrible move. You just play something like rook e1. The knight is now under attack again. Black can't really go to f6 now because you just take on f5. And if black goes to d6, you know, here I would like take a moment and go, all right, well, what do I know about this position? I have various attacking moves. Hey, look at this, the queen's trapped. Oops. And after rook f6, you don't even have to take, you know? Like, there's a lot of ways here that black can get into some serious trouble. Knight c5, by the way, we already took a look at this. We just go here, and now this is a pure Greek gift with the queen coming to h5. They obviously need to come forward, and this is just game over waiting to happen. Knight e6 is lethal. If d6, knight e6, the next move is queen takes g7 with a checkmate. If f5, you slide the queen back, and the exact same thing is going to happen. And of course, here, black can survive for a little longer. You know, maybe they can play king f6, for instance. First of all, you always have knight h7. Second of all, you don't have to rush. Like, I think you can just go here. The knight is hanging, but it's also the king. I mean, the king is the real problem here. I mean, I don't see an immediate, I mean, you know, I'm looking at all sorts of rook e1, but even taking the knight and queen here, and this is mate. So you're totally crushing. The point being that castling and then going to take on e4 is simply not great after d5, but black can also play a little bit more passively. And you'll put the rook on e1, like I just said. You know, black can retreat to a couple of different spots. You're always setting up this sacrifice. And after knight g6, you just go straight. I mean, like, we'll get rid of that knight. If that knight goes to a5 or to g6, we have different plans. But here's another Greek gift, knight g5 and queen g4. And again, it's the same attacking pattern and the same path to victory. I think the best way for black to defend, if I'm not mistaken, is to play like this, because this protects the Greek gift. And you'll remember that when the knight went back to f6, look, when the knight went back to f6, in this position, we had queen a4, queen h4, right? But now with the knight on e7, knight f6, there is no queen. I mean, we never move the bishop, right? So this doesn't really make sense. So we just play bishop g5. We just play bishop g5. And we're threatening to damage the pawns, and this comes as well. h5 is on the way. And this doesn't stop it because we still go h5, and this is when your opponents know they've messed up, because if the knight runs away, you come back with huge pressure, and if they take you, then this is really bad news. And here's a nice way that, you know, they can just lose everything. Knight g6, knight f7, a piece can come up and over. It's mate. Like, it's just going to be mate pretty soon. They have to be super, super careful. To summarize, this plan of castling and only then taking is simply way too dangerous for black. You play the move d5, and then you get massive attacking chances.